What is your last name? Spell it. First name, middle initial.
Briggs, Briggs. Stuart, middle initials L.
What year were you born?
1975.
Where did you live when you became part of the military?
Northern Wisconsin, little town called Spooner.
If you graduated from high school, what high school did you graduate from and in what year?
I graduated from Spooner High School in 1993.
When you were in high school, did you ever believe that you would be part of the military? If so, why did you believe this?
Yes, I believed I was going to be part of the military. My grandfather was in the military, and I really didn't have any other options.
What branch of service were you a part of?
Air Force.
How did you get in the service? Did you volunteer or were you drafted?
I volunteered. I actually enlisted while I was in high school. Signed paperwork to enlist and go into basic training when I got out of high school. So
Where was your basic at?
Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas.
It is said that in basic training, the individual is broken and the serviceman is created. Would you agree with this? What do you remember about basic training that you still remember today?
For most people, that's true. My grandfather was, like I said, World War II Army veteran, so I was used to that type of mentality that they had in basic training. The one thing I remember is how good the chow halls were in the Air Force, even in basic training.
How long did your basic training last and what year did you finish basic training?
I finished basic training at the end of 1993. I enlisted in August, and I believe basic training was 6 or 7 weeks long. So it would have been in November, I believe, October sometime when I got out of basic training.
When basic training was over, did you have a chance to go home or did you immediately move on to service?
I did not go home. I went straight into technical school for my job script, and it was there at Lackland Air Force Base, so I stayed and waited for tech school to start.
Where were you sent after basic for advanced training?
Lackland Air Force Base, stayed in the same spot. I actually moved only about 3 blocks away from where I did my basic training. So.
Do you agree that you were put in the right position when you were sent on for advanced training?
Yes, the ASVAB test and my choice of technical school were both really accurate. I still enjoy working on heavy equipment and cars and trucks, so yeah, I'd say that would be definitely the case.
What skills do you remember being taught during advanced training?
Probably the best one is K-loaders. K-loaders are basically a huge platform machine that picks up big crates and loads them into airplanes. So those were the ones that are probably the most memorable because they're just a huge scissor lift platform that's about 40 feet long.
What was your job when you began military service?
It was a special purpose mechanic. So working on heavy equipment, aircraft, flight line equipment, anything that had an engine pretty much besides an airplane is what we worked on.
Where did you begin your military service after advanced training?
Whiteman Air Force Base in Noster, Missouri. I got there about 3 months after the first 2 B-2s made it there, so in the beginning of 1994.
What was happening in the world when you were in the military?
Big thing was B-2s. They could get around the world in 12 hours. anywhere in the world in 12 hours, and it had changed just about everything that everybody had thought about warfare as far as planes were concerned. So it was pretty neat to be stationed at the base that those were stationed at. And then we were just coming out of Desert Storm and starting into the Desert Shield side of Saudi Arabia and the Middle East conflict. So those were the two big things I remember.
From your time in the service, could you give 4 or 5 things that you remember vividly even today?
Again, the B-2, Desert Storm, Desert Shield, just being, trying to get used to the base, and with the B-2s being there, you know, a lot of celebrities like some of the Kansas City Chiefs football players actually would come down to the base on the weekends and during the week to check everything out and get a tour of the base, and that's about the most vivid ones I remember.
Can you remember any of the names of the people who you served with during your time of service, and what impression did they make on you?
Well, there was a lot of guys. Most of them you can't remember their names. A lot of them you can remember their last names because you know, a lot of it was just last name things. But there was a few guys. Cogdell was one of them. I always called him Cog Diesel. He was 6'2" and about 150 pounds soaking wet. Little beanpole dude, but he was really tall, so he looked goofy, and he was just a goofy guy, and it's crazy. He was a nutty guy. He was the only guy back in the day back in the 90s when the Chiefs were playing, and they were going to playoffs almost every year back then. He was the only guy in the stadium wearing Denver Broncos stuff, which everybody absolutely hated the Denver Broncos back then, and he'd go in there and just big old smile on his face. So that's the one guy I remember that was just nuttier than all get out. So.
How long did you serve in the military?
I did my 4 years and got out. So.
What was the reason for you to get out?
They wanted me to go to Korea, and I really didn't want to go, and I had met my future wife and really didn't want to leave her either, so I knew I could get a job outside the Air Force with what they had trained me to do and make a good living at it, so I decided to get out.
If you served during time of war, what engagements can you remember?
Didn't serve during time of war. The only thing that we had was the bombing at Khobar Towers in 1996, and they moved everybody from one spot down to where we were stationed at. But that was a tanker truck that was actually parked alongside of Khobar Towers out on the street. Got set off. It was a huge explosion. Khobar Towers was basically 2 big 12-story hotels for the military on base, and it took out one of the Khobar Towers. So there's a lot of guys that got hurt in that one, but time of war, no.
What do you remember most about your time in the service?
Probably my time over in Saudi Arabia. I got to stop in a couple of spots where I really wanted to actually see those parts of the world anyway. So we had a layover in Italy for a day, and we had a layover for 2 or 3 days in Germany also. So those are the ones I remember is the trips back and forth and the time in Saudi Arabia.
Do you remember any of the like places that you visited?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of it is downtown, and it's just like any other new city that you go to. You know, you kind of wander around and wander in and out of places, and don't really know where you're at for you know, unless you go there quite often. But,
Did you go with others or is it just you?
when we went as groups, yeah, 3 or 4 guys. So we didn't want anybody to be alone, and you know, actually they tried picking on you or arresting you if you were by yourself and not in a group. So
What qualities do you believe that you carried from the military to where you are today?
I'd say work ethic, and then just the general knowledge of working on equipment, you know, different kinds of equipment would be the 2 big things.
What are your most enduring memories of your time in service?
I'd say just working with the guys in the shop. I mean, you had civilians and military working together all the time, so and it was everybody pretty much got along really well for the most part, and you actually learned a lot more from the civilians working in the shop. Those guys had a lot of knowledge that not a lot of the military guys had, so I always tried to, you know, gravitate towards the civilian guys that had the most knowledge to try and get as much knowledge as I could from those guys. So.
Do you ever get back together with the people you served with?
No, those guys, some of those guys are still in the military running around the world, and the other ones weren't there when I left, so I'm not for sure where any of those guys are at.
Is there anything else that you can remember, like a story or event, time that happened when you were in the military?
No, not any that I can talk about. So I know there's a few times that, you know, I think every military person remembers that probably comes up as confidential or classified, and some of them are really serious and some of them are just something that the military does not want any of them to talk about. So everybody has those, and I've had a couple of them, and they're not that big of a deal, but there's still some things that you cannot talk about, and I'm not going to. So.
Are there any like guys from basic training that you remember that were like you were tighter with than others?
Yeah, well, Patterson, Don Patterson, him and I were in tech school. We were in basic, we were in 2 different flights as far as basic training, but when we got into tech school, I actually went home for Christmas with him to Mississippi with him and his family, and stayed down there for about I think it was a week. I think it was 4 or 5 days. We went down there, so I actually didn't go home for Christmas because they gave us like a week off. But I did spend a week in Mississippi with old Donnie Patterson.
Were you happy that you enlisted in the military?
Yes. Yep. I was couldn't afford college. Really didn't know about any other options, and I knew the military would give me the training, give me food, give me a place to sleep, and give me a paycheck to do it. So that was, for what situation I was in after I got out of high school, that was my best option. So.
Would you recommend it to others?
Yes, I actually recommended it to my son, and he's in the Navy now. So.
After you left the military, what was your first job?
Mechanic, farm equipment mechanic. I actually started that job 2 months before I got out of the Air Force. Worked there on the weekends. We were able to work 4 10-hour days and then get a 3-day weekend. So on Friday and Saturday I would go work at a farm equipment dealer basically as a interview process to see if they would be willing to hire me or not. So, and then I've been a mechanic ever since.
What other skills do you remember that from the military that you still use today?
I don't know. I can't. I mean, the shooting skills, I already had those before I went in. I think the understanding the mechanical knowledge and mechanical side of working on equipment that you don't always have to know what you're doing to work on something. There's always books, training, and material to help you with repairing and fixing equipment. So that's probably the one thing I remember.
When you put on your uniform, did you have any sense of pride or anything?
Yeah, I did. I always enjoyed wearing the uniform, and it's sad that some people walk around that weren't in the military, wear uniforms and try and pose as military when they weren't even close to it, because I know everybody that I knew, and me myself personally, we enjoyed putting on the uniform every day and took a lot of pride in it. So.
If you were to go back, would you still enter into the Air Force, or would you do a different branch?
Oh, I'd still enter into the Air Force. There's nothing like it. Everybody else complains that they're the worker bees of the military, and the Air Force just walks around and waits for everybody else to get stuff done. But you get the best of almost everything when you're in the Air Force, for sure. And not all Air Force people are fly boys. I mean, there are people in the Air Force that do work, but you hear a lot of complaints from Army, Marines that the Air Force gets babied a lot. So, but we're the ones that like coming in and dropping bombs and helping out the boys on the ground too. So there's a trade-off.
What was your favorite equipment to work on?
Favorite equipment to work on? It's got to be bulldozers. I used to love bulldozers. I mean, you could just basically maul anything you wanted to with a bulldozer. So, and we had big ones. I mean, we had the big D9s and some Allisons, and they were just big. I just used to like working on the biggest stuff I could get a hold of, and that was one of them. So it was always fun.
When you were in the military, did you ever feel like in danger when you went against?
Yeah. When you're over in Saudi Arabia, going off base was not. I mean, you were with other guys, but there were a few times where you wondered if you were going to make it back. And even when you did get back to base, you still had to go through Saudi military gate along with an American gate, and there were sometimes you didn't even know if you were going to make it through the Saudi gate. the Saudi Arabian guards at the gate, sometimes they would just, for no apparent reason, would just tell you, and they had automatic weapons just like we did, and they would just draw down on you and tell you to get out for no reason whatsoever. So yeah, there's been a few times where guns have been drawn, and it's not. I don't want a gun to be drawn on me ever again. Back then, when you're young and you're a guy, guys don't think about the amount of danger, the level of danger that they're in, like women or guys my age. Now, if I was in the military at this age, some of the stuff that went on as younger servicemen, you think back and you're like, why? There's no way I would even go over there now. So there's something to be said about being younger and not knowing any better, and being in the military as far as that kind of stuff is concerned. Because if they asked me to go now, I probably wouldn't go, knowing what I know now. So, but yeah, there's been a few times where guns have been drawn, and it's not very nice, and it freaks you out a little bit too.
What was your favorite part? Basic, advanced, or your service? And why?
I'd say after I got out of tech school, just being at Whiteman, I mean, Saudi Arabia was okay, but just being at Whiteman and being around some of the regular guys and some of the friends I made at Whiteman, I'd say the time at Whiteman was probably the best time, because we were just working on equipment and having fun. So that was probably the best time at Whiteman.
Did you get leave time?
Yeah, we got a certain amount of leave time every year. I always took some at Christmas and some in the beginning of the year, but with 3-day weekends and holidays off, you would sometimes 2 or 3 times a year you would have 4-day weekends. So a lot of times I would just go home on those 4-day weekends. So it was only about a 10 or 11 hour drive, and it wasn't too bad when you were young driving that far. So. But you know how far it is up there.
Oh yeah.
And I would, Thursday after work at 4 o'clock, I'd be in the truck and drive all the way up there. And then Monday afternoon, I'd get in the truck and drive all the way back down here so I could be to work on Tuesday morning again. So I did that 10 or 12 times a year. So yeah, that's so the leave time, yeah, you had some, but I really didn't. I really didn't have to use it with those 4-day weekends. I'm glad I didn't, because my grandparents passed away while I was in the Air Force, and I had to use it all up for that. So I was off for almost a month and a half for that. But yeah, you do get a certain amount of leave time.
When you came home from leave, did you feel like affected or changed a little bit from going over through?
No, not really. I'm not even going to get into post-traumatic stress disorder, but there was nothing like that. Nothing at all like that. And it might have been because of the way I was raised, it's possible that's why it didn't affect me like maybe it does some people, but it wasn't any worse than anything that I had done or seen at home, so for the most part, just a different part of the world.
When you were at advanced training, was there anyone that you like looked up to, or like you wanted to be? They were kind of like your role model, or?
There was one tech sergeant from Tennessee. Really good guy, really down to earth. A lot of people treated you like you were basically dirt after basic training and just getting into tech school. This guy, he was just one of those guys that told you exactly what was going to happen, how it was going to happen, and not to worry about anything. Just put your head down, do your work, get your work done, and everything will be all right. You'll be out here in no time. So I think that guy was probably one of the guys that I really looked up to while I was there, because it doesn't matter what time of day it was, you could go ask him, and he would tell you directly exactly what was going to happen, or what the deal was with anything that you were having problems with. So, and I cannot remember for the life of me his name. So,
When you, from going from basic to advanced training, was there a lot of people from basic that went with you to advanced training, or not really?
no, there was quite a few people that went into different categories and got sent to, I believe it was 2 other bases. If I remember right, there was one guy that was in tech school with me from my basic training flight. And other than him, everybody else was going to other training facilities. So he was the only one there.
Was it hard to get along with the people that you worked with? Or
No.
just like any other place?
No. You had a couple of guys that were crazy, but for the most part, everybody got along fine, and basically, like, everybody knew that there was a job to do, and you were just another part added to getting that job done. So there was nothing like that, at least not where I was working.
Do you feel like you made a big accomplishment when you went over to Saudi Arabia?
Yeah. The first time, I mean, it just felt like we were working in a really hot place that sucked. The second time around, yeah, that's when Cobar Towers got hit. That's when you get a call from 3- and 4-star generals and asking how many vehicles can you get running, because it's basically like a salvage yard down where I was stationed at in Al Kharj, and there was over 500 Humvees just sitting in the desert with a whole bunch of other equipment. And you get a phone call and say, it's asking how many Humvees can you get running in 2 weeks, and there's only 3 guys there. You're like, well, not very many, probably. So, and when it's all said and done, you get over 400 of them running in a 2-week span, with the help of 10 other security police that are working around the clock just like you are. I mean, that's pretty awesome, especially when it comes down and thanks you. So, so yeah, that's probably one of the things that I'll remember. Was pretty cool about that.
How was it hard to get used to the weather down there, or in Saudi Arabia?
It was hot, As long as you stay hydrated. It was a dry heat in Riyadh and Al-Kars. I don't think I would ever have survived into Iran because it was 110 degrees and 100% humidity every day. And it was 115 to 120 degrees in Riyadh and Al-Kars, but it was out in the middle of the desert, dry heat. It really wasn't that bad. So, I mean, we worked outside at both places, and as long as you stayed hydrated, it was not too bad.
Do you feel like you were fed well at all of your places, including basic and advanced in your service, or?
That's one of the things about the Air Force. They got the best chow halls in all of the military. You get fed well all the time. Yeah.
What was your favorite meal or food item?
Oh, well, I bribed the guys because I was powerlifting at the time. When I was in Riyadh with another one of my buddies, his name was Taz, bodybuilder from Las Vegas. Looked like a Greek god. It was ridiculous. He was 6'3", 250 pounds, and just absolutely chiseled. It was nutty. And then you had me, I was 5'10", 285 pounds. Looked like a 55-gallon drum walking around. But, I mean, when you can lift over 1,000 pounds in the gym, guys usually don't mess with you. So, but we used to bribe they had people come in from other countries to work because Saudis did not do manual labor jobs. They would hire guys to do it. So these guys come from, I'm wanting to say India or somewhere, and they were the ones that were the kitchen workers. So we would actually bribe them with shoes and jeans. And we would go over there and go in there and give them shoes and jeans. And we would have steak and shrimp every night for supper. I mean, they would have one or the other for us for supper every night. Then we asked them if they could make the rice and egg mix, and for our, as much carbs and calories as we could get. And, I mean, we had steak and shrimp every night while I was in Riyadh. So I ate very well there.
Did you get dessert ever?
Oh yeah, every night. Ice cream, and then Sprite and Fanta orange mix, soda.
Would you say what you learned in basic training and advanced training actually helped you out when you went to Saudi Arabia?
Yes. Yep. Definitely.
Do you think basic or advanced training helped you more when you served your time?
Yeah. Yeah.
During basic, do you have any stories of I don't know, some people have funny stories that they remember, just things that went on or anything like that you can remember?
I remember towards the end when you're pretty much graduated, you actually, if new flights, basic training flights come in and you're one of the flight leaders, which I was in basic, you actually get the privilege of going down and helping out Hayes, the new, it's not, I won't say Hayes, but yeah, I'll say Hayes, because that's what it is. You're basically helping the drill instructors yell and scream at the new guys to get them all straightened out and situated and in their room and in their bunks and all that stuff on the first night. And we actually got to go do that, which was pretty fun. So, and then the only other thing I can remember is just carrying this little scrawny guy around the PT track because we needed to make our time as a flight in order to pass basic training, and we were failing every time because of this guy. And me and another guy finally just picked him up and carried him around the track by his arms, so to make the time. But it was about the only two things I can remember, that come to mind right away. So that's dragging a guy around the track. That's the one I remember the most, because we had to do that for a week.
In basic, were the guys a lot around your age or mixed or?
A lot of guys were my age. A lot of guys had just gotten out of high school. There were 2 or 3 guys. One of the other ones was a flight leader. He actually was injured. He was a semi-professional football player getting ready to go to tryouts for, I'm wanting to say it was the Rams. And got injured, and he had just, it was a shoulder injury, so it wasn't anything serious as far as, where he couldn't get into the military once he was healed up. So he had pretty much lost his spot on the semi-pro team and his tryout for the pros, so he joined the military, and he was one of the flight leaders along with me. So he was a little bit older than everybody else, so. But there was very, very few of them, maybe 3 or 4.
Was there any other ones from Wisconsin?
No,
Can you remember?
no, none on my flight. Some guys from Michigan, some guys from Minnesota, guy from Montana that cried for 3 days and went home, which was weird, because I didn't think basic training was that tough. I mean, physically he couldn't do it, so that was kind of odd. But yeah.
Was there a lot of men that dropped out during basic training, or just?
No, just 2. I want to say 2 out of 40 in our flight. So, like I said, Air Force was probably one of the easiest basic trainings out there.
With Veterans Day coming up, is there anything that comes to mind when you think of that day?
Just my grandpa. World War II. There's not very many people that are still alive that were in that war, so that one, and probably the Korean War, because I know a lot of older guys that were in that war also. So, growing up, I was around a lot of the older guys, living with my grandma and grandpa, so. Yeah, World War II guys and Korean War guys, not very many of them left.
Is there anything else you want to add? Anything else you want to comment or say?
No, I'm good.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming to interview.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's all we're gonna do.
Is that enough time?
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
So we ran out of questions and like